time. Morning, church.
Morning. Morning.
Just a little bizarre.
Morning.
Good morning and happy Mother's Day.
Yay.
Happy
Yay.
Mother's Day. You know, welcome to church this morning. Welcome to church online. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. And just say, church, make sure you tell others, because sometimes we haven't got everyone's email. So just make sure you tell others and people can log in. Just follow Restore Church on Facebook or find us on YouTube, Restore Church Boston, and subscribe and you'll always get it. Or follow us on Twitter, which is Restore Church B. Okay. In a moment, Emma's gonna come and speak. But you know what? This is like any other Sunday. Okay, we gather, even though we have this the physical distancing, we still gather together. We are the church, and we're going to worship the Lord today. So it's going to be a really good morning. At the end, when Emma is finished, we're going to do communion. So in your homes, let me encourage you, bit of bread, biscuit, whatever, but take communion. It's going to be really good. For your children, there is a YouTube channel, just especially that we've put together, and it's called Restore Church Boston Kids Page. While you're listening to the preach, get your kids on it. There's loads of teaching on there. There's worship on there for the kids. It's really good. There's about 90 teachings and worship stuff for the kids. Go on playlist and it's fine. Okay, we're just going to pray, and then we're going to get Emma. Emma, would you come up? That'd be really good. Lord, we just bless you. You can clap if you want. There is a couple of us here, just a couple of the team that we need necessarily for the morning. Awesome. Let's just pray. Lord, we thank you for your blessings every day. Lord, we just want to come together and worship you and lift your name up. Lord, we just pray for this morning. Pray for no technical difficulties, Lord, with the camera. Lord, we just pray for a continuous streaming out. Lord, we just pray for those that are home. Lord, we pray for those who have maybe self-isolated themselves, Lord, because they're not well. Lord, we just pray for fear to be gone. Lord, we just pray for healing to come. Lord, we just pray for that feeling of loneliness. Lord, take that away. Lord, in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Morning, church. Morning. So this is a very different kind of Mother's Day to the day that we were possibly expecting to talk today. So traditionally Mother's Day is a day, isn't it, where sons and daughters everywhere focus on getting home. It's a day of being there for mum, doing the whole flowers and going out for dinner kind of a thing. And for those of us, if you like, in my household with little kids, we are still doing that Mother's Day thing. Pearlie wanted to do me breakfast in bed today, but as I had to be there early, we've settled on lunch in bed. I was a little bit worried about this because I was like, Pearlie, when you say lunch in bed, does that mean everyone is having lunch in mummy's bed? Or do I get to eat lunch on my own? So Pearlie paused for a minute, obviously pondering which way this would work better, and she was like, you can have lunch in bed, mummy. I will stand on the stairs and I will shout at everybody else that they have to go down. So think of me at lunchtime as I eat my chocolate spread sandwich to the delight of Pearl going, get down the stairs! It's Mother's Day! It's going to be great. But it is going to be absolutely awesome. and I know that I'm immensely privileged that my guys are home this weekend. But there are many families that are going to be separated today. Just as so many of us in this church are separated, and it's going to be hard. And for many people, it's going to be lonely. This whole COVID-19 thing, it kind of was for you, but it just crept up on me. In a world of 24 news, it was the Chinese virus, another thing. It was just far removed, affecting others like so many things that are beamed into our very weary gazes. You know, we see, don't we, day by day, wars and famines and sicknesses, and they're all sanitised by TVs and smartphones, and we're desensitised by this absolute overload of information in our hands 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't know when it hit you that this might be a little bit different and might actually affect the way we lived, or when fear set in for you. For me, it was just so gradual. I remember just a few weeks ago chatting with my hairdresser about how it was being talked about everywhere, but it didn't really seem to be much of a thing. There were a few people making mutterings of panic. I remember hearing the first person in the UK had contracted it. Some people somewhere stuck on a cruise ship being isolated. A group of expats flown home from China joking about the hotel-like conditions that they were being quarantined in for 2 weeks. Some memes on Facebook about Corona beer being isolated in the fridge. And then it did start to get more serious, didn't it? You could feel the fear in the air as people talked more and more about it. And rumours started of mass events that were going to be cancelled, or maybe schools were going to be closed, or maybe our over 70s should be staying at home. At work, we were preparing for our national conference that was going to take place a week from now, and so I found myself watching the news daily to see what was going to happen. Would they be banning it? At what point could we not travel? Would it take place? Would it not take place? And all of a sudden, it seemed like it was just escalating. I don't know if that's because I was paying attention to the news, so it was so much more detail than normal, or whether it was that everything just escalated and the panic just escalated. And all of a sudden, people started stopping shaking hands, and panic buying started in the shops on the loo roll and the pasta things, and outrage starts on social media at the people that are panic buying. And parents are asking themselves, will my kids stay home from school? Will my kids go to school? And tomorrow, parents around the UK start this unknown length of time of homeschooling our children, while we answer difficult questions about why we can't go here. We can't do that without causing fear in our children's lives. The pubs and the cafes have closed, and the libraries and the gyms. But the moment I felt loss and a real sense of shock, the moment that it really hit home that there was going to be a change to my way of life, was when I just caught a glimpse from a Member of Parliament talking about how religious meetings would need to stop, church going online. And I just felt a real loss. Because going to church on a Sunday, isn't it just such a big part of our lives? If you're like me, I've been dragged to church from the time I was born. And there's probably been very few weeks in my life that I haven't rocked up on a Sunday to a church. And many of us, we serve, don't we? We work out our serving in kids' ministries, in welcomes teams, in pastoral teams. A major part of living out our faith is done in church buildings on a Sunday, serving, receiving teaching, fellowshipping with one another, and this unseen virus has taken it away. And so then I started thinking, how much of my faith ends up being lived out within these four walls? And as it became clear that we would no longer be able to meet up in person, I saw an incredible thing. I saw the Church of God suddenly realised that it was not bound by four walls. What I saw was the Church of God erupting.
That's good.
And suddenly we were going to meet online. Suddenly we were going to meet everywhere we could. This week I have actually lost count of the amount of prayer groups that I have been invited to virtually.
Wow.
I think I could have attended a prayer group every morning and every evening without breaking a sweat or searching for. There are worship sessions on live popping up all over the place for the socially isolated. We're putting in, I'm here to help you, grocery notes through our neighbours' doors. Doors that we've maybe walked by and driven by for years now and never dared to knock on those doors. What I feel at this point, in the midst of this crisis, is a stirring of excitement.
Yeah.
The church is finding its feet.
Yeah, too right.
Because you see, the thing is, our faith was not meant to be contained inside a building.
Yeah, come on.
The church was not designed to be built of bricks and mortar and service times.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that those things are wrong. I'm not saying that it's wrong for us to be gathering inside a church building together. That's not wrong. We live in Britain, it rains a lot. But you know what? That's not what the church itself was designed to be. So little of the Bible is actually spent at the temple. So little of it. You read it from cover to cover. There is a snippet inside the temple. The rest of it is out. It is about the foundations of our faith are laid out for us on hillsides. They're in fishing boats. They are by sick people's beds. They are having dinner with those who are outcasts. The forefathers of our faith, they were walking, they were talking, they were travelling to spread the good news of Jesus.
Come on.
And I got to thinking about how we can't get out there. It would be irresponsible for us as a church to be out there right now.
Come on.
And feet of Jesus by actually sitting with people physically or being with people physically right now. And then I thought about Paul. Paul, incarcerated, knowing that he was going to be executed at any point, he lives out his faith by writing letters that have become part of our Bible. How many times have you heard a sermon that is preached on a letter from Paul from prison? I can't count them how many times I have heard the beautiful words about Paul preaching from prison through the letter. Nothing was going to hold this man back from sharing, from shepherding, from teaching his people. In Philippians it says, chapter 1, verse 12, I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. Hang on a minute. Paul is in. He is locked away, he is isolated, and he says, what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. Why was Paul in prison? He was in prison because they wanted to stop the gospel advancing. You know, what the enemy will use for bad, God will use for good. And I firmly believe that about this situation of this virus. What the enemy would use to cause fear, to cause panic, to cause destruction, to cause death, our God, our unchanging, incredible and vital God will use it. He will use it to advance the gospel. Carrying on, it says, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are so much more bold to speak the word without fear. What I'm praying for over the next few weeks is that we become a church that are bold. We become a church that maybe we get bold online first of all, where it feels a little bit safer. But you know what? I'm praying we become so bold, we become so fearless that when they let us out of our houses again, it will be like a tidal wave. Okay. This morning, we're going to look at a widow. Because it is Mother's Day. And so I wanted to look at a woman and see how God used her. So maybe it's not the typical Mother's Day selection, but we're going to go back into Kings and we're going to look at the widow of Zarephath. So I'm going to start actually at the beginning of the chapter, just to give it a little bit of placing. So 1 Kings chapter 17. Now Elijah the Tishbite of Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain in these years, except the Lord came to him. Depart from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook of Cherith, which is in the east of Jordan, and you will drink from the brook. I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. And so he went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and lived by the brook of Cherith, that is in the east of the Jordan, and the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And after a while the brook dried up, because there was no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there, because I have commanded a widow there to feed you. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Bring me a little water in a vessel that I may drink. And as she was going to bring it, he called to her and said, As the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. And now I am gathering a couple of sticks, that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, Do not fear, go and do as you have said, but first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me. And afterwards make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be spent, and the jug of oil shall not be empty, until the day the Lord sends rain on the earth. And she went and did as Elijah said. And she and he and her household ate for many days. The jar of flour was not spent, and neither the jug of oil became empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. This widow was absolutely hopeless. I remember being pregnant with my eldest child some 21 years ago, and I can remember I was thrilled to be carrying this baby, but I can remember saying, I can't imagine this bump that was here. I can't imagine that as a baby. And I remember, and I don't think I shared this with many people, probably with my mum. I was really worried that my not being able to really imagine this bump as a baby, my not being able to really kind of talk to it as a baby, meant that when I had that baby, I wasn't going to bond with him. I really was. I was really young, and I was really worried that that was what was going to happen. Anyway, I had that baby, and the moment that he was placed into my arms, it was like, and I know that everyone experienced this, but for me, it was like some kind of shockwave. Just some kind of shock of this intensity that I had never ever experienced. I'd have died for that child there. And it's never wavered, and it's never changed, and I don't believe it ever will. And all that happens, the more kids you have, is that you just get more of that. But, and you love them all the same. And so I look at this woman, this widow, who is gathering sticks so that she can bake the last bit of flour and oil before her and her son lay down and die. And I think we so often, we just gloss over that, don't we? And we just imagine a woman like any other woman just gathering sticks, and then they're just going to lay down and they're going to die. And then I started thinking about this, and I go, let's look at this. There had been famine for a number of years now in the land. From our 24-hour TV screens, is that famine looks pretty horrific. When Elijah met this woman, she didn't look like a healthy woman. She was emaciated. She was starving. She was on her last legs. And her little boy, because he must have been quite little, would have been exactly the same. She had been eking out food for months now. She'd seen her husband, her neighbours die, her friends die, any livestock they owned die. And she'd been looking at that jar of flour and that jar of oil getting lower and lower, and wondering how little could they eat each day. How little amount could they eat in the hope that the rains would come, in the hope that salvation would come from somewhere. Because that woman would have done anything to keep her son alive. Because she loved him. You can just tell by the way she speaks in these verses that she loved him. And she wanted to fight for him. But at this moment, she had got to the point of absolute hopelessness. She had nothing to live with. It wasn't that she had nothing to live for, because her was everything. That she could enable him or her to live with. And hope had gradually slipped away, and she knew that her boy was going to die. And I imagined her fear, thinking, what if I die first and he's left on his own? Her absolute terror. She couldn't sink any lower. Every instinct in her mother's body was defeated. And yet it says, when the rise and go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there, behold, I have commanded a widow there to feed you. God had spoken to this widow. And yet, in her hopelessness, she just couldn't hear him. Or in her hopelessness, she couldn't believe that he would come to her aid in her hour of need. Or in her hopelessness, she needed to prioritise her son's last meal over whatever God was telling her to do, because after all, God had left her to starve. But God didn't just say, well, I'm not going to send Elijah to you now, I'm going to send you off to someone else. He still sends Elijah. Elijah tells the woman not to be afraid. You know, throughout our Bible, doesn't it say, do not fear, do not worry, do not fret. Who of you can make anything any better by worrying and fearing and fretting? God does tell us not to be afraid, an awful, awful lot. But there are times when we can't do stuff in our own strength, when we cannot provide for our needs without any help. And the thing is, then we don't learn a real reliance on God. Jesus said, didn't he, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And the thing is, I think if we're really, really honest, none of us really want to be the poor in spirit. We'd quite like to be the comfortably off in spirit. Yeah? The middle class in spirit. My fridge is reasonably well stocked today in spirit. That's how we want to be. I'm not in spirit. But that isn't going to teach us a reliance on God.
No.
I read this earlier. It said, poverty is often seen as a curse from God, and wealth is often seen as a blessing or a stamp of approval by God. But God does not operate in that way. When Jesus made the statement, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, he's really saying, blessed are you when you don't have enough. Blessed are you when you can't figure it out or dig yourself out of your current situation. The message says, blessed are you when you're at the end of your rope. I wonder how many of us at this time feel like we don't have enough to meet our needs. Or we feel overwhelmed by fear. We maybe aren't feeling like the comfortably well off in spirit. We're starting to feel a little bit like the poor in spirit. And Elijah says, don't be afraid. Something else I noticed about this woman was that she recognised Elijah as the man of God. Now Elijah could have been wearing the clerical collar of the day, but somehow I doubt it. Partly because what I read about Elijah is he doesn't look very regular and very clerical. And also he had been living for a number of years by a brook being fed by ravens, so I'm thinking he looked a bit dirty and scruffy, just like she did. But there was something in Elijah that made him instantly recognisable as the man of God. And I don't believe that that was just because she'd had that nudge from God about someone coming. I don't believe that was the case. I believe that Elijah carried on such an anointing that when he spoke, when he said to her, get me some water and bring me a cake of bread, she heard in her spirit a call of God, because he was recognisable as God's. And you see, the thing is, I'm thinking today, in this story, there are two people, the widow and then there's Elijah. And I think we can see examples for ourselves in both these characters. And I think the challenge for us when we look at Elijah is, are we recognisable as people of God when we are meeting with other people? When we are talking to them, whether that be online or whether that be in person? Are we recognisable in our behaviour, in what we carry as being people of God. And the thing is about Elijah at this point, he had come from a situation where he had had to be entirely dependent upon God. When he was living by that brook, he could get water, but he had to wait for ravens to drop the meat so that he could eat. I'm kind of thinking about it, in those early days, was he kind of tense? You know, lunchtime's coming. No birds. No birds. No birds. It's 1:10, there's no bird. Oh, there's a bird. Need my food. Need my food. And then I imagine as the weeks went on, it could have been easy to become complacent, but in that isolation, what he actually did was become dependent upon God.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Really
dependent for every morsel, realising that every time a raven came, God was saying yet again, Elijah, don't be afraid, I've got this. And so when Elijah walks into that widow's life, when he walks into that hopeless situation, he carries on himself such an anointing because he is poor in spirit. He doesn't walk to her in his own strength. Because if it hadn't been for the provision, the awesome, miraculous provision of God of meat through ravens, he would have been dead. He would have had no strength. Elijah walks into that situation not of himself, but he walks into there saying, I am alive by the grace of God. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And that really is a people that we need to be, especially in these times.
Yeah.
We need to realise that actually we need to be the poor in spirit.
Yeah, totally.
We do not need to be the hoarding pastor in spirit. And that isn't me judgmental on people that are panic buying. You know what? I think we should absolutely stop this absolute outrage of condemning people on social media for panic buying. How dare we judge people? How dare we line up behind our computer screens and judge people because they've bought too many toilet rolls or too many packets of pasta or weirdly sweet and sour sauce. We don't get to judge people for that because people are not panic buying out of selfishness, they are panic buying because they're frightened.
Yeah.
And we don't get to judge people for how they work out their fear. What we get to do as the people of God is to say, I have 2 packets of pasta in my cupboard. I wonder which of my neighbours might need this.
Yeah, it's good. It's so
We
good.
get to say, I've just bought a sack of potatoes, I'll fake that out and see who else might want
That's good.
potatoes.
That's so good.
Because that carries the presence of God,
Yeah.
not condemning people on social media.
Yeah.
And that's not in my notes, but it makes me so angry because we don't get to condemn people for their fear. We get to bring them into the light by showing them compassion.
Yeah.
You know, when God looked on you in your filthy, dirty, horrific state of sin, when he looked on me like that, he didn't get mad and he didn't get judgmental. He broke his heart in compassion.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah,
why he
yeah,
sent
yeah,
my
yeah.
Jesus.
That's so
That
good.
is why he sent
Yeah.
my Jesus.
Yeah.
So church, right now, look at your cupboards and see what you can give
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Because my Jesus said, if you've got 2 of anything, give it away.
Yeah.
You don't need to be scared about that.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
need to be scared because my God is the God of provision.
Yeah.
My God is the God that can fill a supermarket shelf.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
God is the God that can keep your cupboard full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us have compassion
Yeah,
on our
yeah.
neighbours. Let us have compassion on those around us. And let us bring people out of fear into life and into hope.
Yeah, that's so good.
I don't know where I was now. But anyway,
Go on, Emma.
Elijah brought a presence of God not through his own strength, but through his total vulnerability and presence of God. And that is who we need to be.
Yeah.
But still, this widow was hopeless. Still, she was broken. She was starving to death. And she had to have to make a choice. When she walked back into her house, she would have seen her son in his weakened and emaciated state laying on a mat. Moments from death, really. And she had a choice. And her choice was, do I obey the call of God on my life? Or do I feed my baby boy? And I don't know how she made that choice. In all honesty, for everything I say, I don't know how she made that choice because I've never had to make that choice. But this woman, this mighty, mighty woman, in that moment, she recognised something in Elijah, and she recognised a call of God on her life.
Yeah.
And so she stepped out. She did something that I think to every mother would be so unimaginable. And she used what little flour she had. She poured what little oil she had, and she baked it, and she carried it past the body of her son, and she gave it to the man of God. Can you imagine her walking back into that house, knowing that she was going to probably see an empty jar and an empty pot? Can you imagine the fear? Is God going to be there? Is he going to be there? And then, can you imagine the wonder? Can you imagine just picking up that empty jar and shaking it? And hang on a minute. At the bottom there are some grains of flour. Can you imagine her nervously tipping the jug and oil pouring out? Just enough. Just enough for today. Was that she was not hopeless. What she learned was that she was the poor in spirit that could be hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah.
This woman learnt what Elijah had learnt, that she could depend upon God for everything.
Yeah.
And she to herself, but because she chose to give everything that she had. And that's the thing about God. He asks us to give everything that we have. Remember Jesus talking about the widow when she put her offering in the temple. There are all these people around, aren't they, with all their rich wallets, and they're filling the offering bucket with money after money after money. And Jesus says, look at that woman. Gives her offering. And I imagine this old lady who has nothing, but for some reason it was stirred in her heart that day that everything that she had, those 2 little pennies, everything needed to go in the offering. And I imagine her walking the walk and it feeling like a walk of shame, walking the walk to the offering bucket amongst all these people that had so much to give and feeling like she had nothing left to give. And I imagine her just trying to sidle it in, hoping that nobody would notice the clink in the bottom of the bucket meant she was putting in a couple of little coins and not notes. I imagine the shame that she felt, but what she didn't know was that her God was watching. Her God was watching, and he saw the weight of those coins. He saw that she gave everything, and he used it as an example to his disciples. To say, look at what you can give. Give everything to me. It doesn't say anything in the Bible about what happened to that widow, but I believe that God would have blessed her.
Yeah.
I don't believe Jesus just singled her out as an example. I believe that God blessed her. I don't know what caused that widow that day to give, but I do know that she obeyed God's call, and God would have honoured her for that. She gave extravagantly, and she gave out of faith.
Yeah.
The widow that fed Elijah gave extravagantly, and she gave out of a fledgling of faith that would have grown day after day. As that widow went day after day and found more and more flour in her jar, and so she was able to feed Elijah, she was able to watch her little boy grow stronger, she was able to see him fill out and start to run around and to grow up. You can imagine that her faith grew stronger and stronger because she realised that it wasn't in her strength anymore that she stood, it was in the strength of God. You know, we believe and we say that God can provide our daily bread, but we very rarely in our very rich Western world get the opportunity to actually see that happen. And maybe right now in this time of crisis, when we do empty. When we do start to wonder, or where will I get my next loaf of bread from? Maybe it's an opportunity that we start to say, God will provide my daily bread.
Yeah.
Our faith grows deeper, tremendously, significantly deeper, when we give out of what we don't really have. See, the thing is, when we are walking alongside God and everything is absolutely rosy and everything is absolutely for us to just slip into a very complacent Christianity. But suddenly, when you strip away everything you have, we don't have complacent Christianity anymore. And we have to start looking at where we're going to be trusting in God. Jane Erickson's Harder notes, when life is rosy, we may slide by without knowing Jesus, imitating him and quoting him and speaking of him, but only in suffering will we know Jesus. And the thing is, I'm not saying it's a huge amount of suffering to be asked to self-isolate and to stay indoors. For me, it sounds like bliss, except that I remember that my kids will be isolating with me. Maybe I rephrase that, maybe I do no suffering. But anyway, and for some people, it's sheer hell. You know, for some people, this means that they're going to literally see no one for weeks on end. And they're terrified. They're going to lose loved ones.
Yeah.
We have people in the NHS that are working probably extended shifts and are absolutely exhausted and are frightened of taking the illness home to their family. We're in a situation that is unprecedented in this country. I was trying to explain to my baby this morning, my 3-year-old, why she couldn't come to church today to see her friends in crash, and she just can't grasp it. Well, why would a germ mean I can't come and play? Doesn't make any sense. Am I going to preschool next? So many fears. There are so many problems and there's so many worries right now that it would be very, very easy for us to feel as that widow first felt and feel hopeless. Even as Christians, it will be very easy for us to feel hopeless. But the challenge to us as people of God is not to feel hopeless, but to become dependent upon God.
Yeah.
It's to live a life that is not reckless and disobeying our government and going out and partying. I'm not saying like that, but to live a life that is dependent upon God and is able to step outside of our own fears and to give to a community around us. Because right now, people are searching for hope and they are searching for answers in a way that they weren't 2 months ago. There will be people that are logging into online services that would never set foot in a church building.
Yeah.
You know, when we share our church services far and wide on Facebook, people can take a sneaky peek at this God. But it's no good them getting a sneaky peek at an attractive God in an online service if the same person condemns them for buying too many toilet rolls.
Yeah. True.
That doesn't match up. If someone gets a sneaky peek of a God that sounds attractive in an online service, but then they see someone rocking up and going, is there anything I can buy for you at the shops because I'm still able to go out and you're not? If someone says, can I pray for you for anything? Do you want to just have a chat this morning? Because I recognise that you're stuck in the house, I'm stuck in the house, let's just talk. When people start to see an attractive people of God that matches with the sermons that are preached, we are going to see the revival that we've been praying for and longing for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so my challenge to you this morning is to be like Elijah.
Yeah.
To get to this point now where you don't choose fear, but you choose a dependence upon God. That each of us looks at the things that we could lock down and shut away and provide for our own and be frightened with, and choose, no, I want to be dependent on God and I want to go wherever God is calling me to go, and I want to do whatever God is calling me to do. And in a moment we're going to take communion. And so, Pastor Stuart encouraged you right at the very beginning that, to grab wherever you can, a bit of bread, a bit of juice. That was my husband's phone, by the way. Just like to publicly salute him for that. Right, whether you're going for tea or biscuits, it really, really doesn't matter because it's a remembrance act. So something to drink and something to eat is absolutely fine. We're rocking it here this morning with our very snazzy communion wafer cups. Anyway. But when we come to communion this morning, I want you to start to stop and to think and to pray and to ask, what is God calling me to in this very strange season? What is he calling me to do? In what way can I step out of the box? In what way can I step out in faith? Who is my neighbour? Where should I be going? Who should I be phoning? Who should I be connecting with? Who should I be helping? Who should I be giving to? In what way do you want me to be Elijah? And my prayer is that God calls us to go deep, and he calls us to do scary stuff, and then we start hearing testimony after testimony of the people of God who were just stepping out and living in faith and seeing the miraculous happen. But I also want to recognise that there might be people listening to this today or in times to come. Maybe you've made it this far through this sermon. And maybe you don't know God, and you're just, some instinct has called you to connect into this message, and you still don't really understand what it's like. And so I feel like it would be totally remiss of me not to take the opportunity just to share with you, if you don't know this God that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because you see, the thing is that God created a world.
Yeah.
He created a world that was absolutely perfect, and he created it, us, people, for his absolute delight, so that he could walk and talk and communicate with us. And it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was perfection itself. And then sin entered the world. And by sin, what I mean is disobedience entered the world. People messed up. They did something that was wrong, that was disobedient. And when that happened, it was like the biggest car crash ripping through our world. What was beautiful and perfect ended with death and with destruction. Sickness came in, disease came in, and illness came in. Wars came in, and famines came in, and fighting came in, and hopelessness came in. Heart broke because all he wanted was to be with the children, the people that he created. And so God sent Jesus. He sent Jesus to rescue us, to restore us into a relationship with him. And right now, you can have that relationship with him. You can know this Jesus. And so just before we go into communion, I'm just going to pray a really simple prayer so that you can just ask Jesus to forgive you for the stuff you've done wrong and to become in a relationship with him. And if it is that you've got loads more questions and you're not there yet and you just don't know, then I encourage you just to comment on Facebook, and one of us will contact you. Or just to connect in with whoever it was that shared this link with you and ask your questions. But right now we're just going to pray. And I'm just going to pray that prayer first. Jesus, I don't know much about you, but I know that you are good and that you are God. And I know that you came to rescue me from a world that has sin and has darkness and has hopelessness and destruction. Being able to be in relationship with you and causes hopelessness. And so I ask you to forgive me for that sin. I say sorry for that wrong stuff. And I know that you have done that. You have forgiven me now. And I know that I can be in a relationship with you and I can get to know you as God in my life. And I know eternity in heaven with you because that's what you promised. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, then I really encourage you just to get in touch with this church somewhere and let one of us just come alongside you and just talk to you about that.
Yeah, it's good.
Right now we're going to go into communion. So grab your biscuits and your cups of tea. Now Jesus said just before he died that we should do communion to remember him. And it's one of the treasured things, isn't it, of our church, that we do communion to remember him. And so as we take communion, and as you do that, I'm going to just read from Isaiah 53. It's in the Message version. And it says, "The servant grew up before God, a scrawny seedling, a scrubby plant in a harsh field. There was nothing attractive about him, nothing to cause us to take a second look. He was looked down on and passed over, a man who suffered and knew pain firsthand. One look at him and people turned away. We looked down on him, he thought he was scum. But the fact is, it was our pains he carried, our disfigurements, all the things wrong with us. We thought he brought it on himself, that God was punishing him for his own failures. But it was our sins that did that to him, that ripped and tore and crushed him. He took the punishment that made us whole. Through his bruises we get healed. We all, like sheep, have wandered off and got lost. We've all done our own thing and gone our own way. And God has piled all our sins, everything we've done wrong on him. On him. He was beaten, he was tortured, but he didn't say a word. Like a lamb taken to be slaughtered, and like a sheep being sheared, he took it all in silence. Justice miscarried and he was led off. And did anyone really know what was happening? He died without a thought for his own welfare, beaten bloody for the sins of my people. They buried him with the wicked and threw him in a grave with a rich man, even though he'd never hurt a soul or said one word that wasn't true. Still, it's what God had in mind all along, to crush him with pain. You see, the plan was to give himself as an offering for sin, so that he'd see life come from it. Life, life, and more life. And God's plan will deeply prosper through him. Out of that terrible travail of soul, he'll see that it's worth it and be glad that he did it. Through what he experienced, my righteous one, my servant, will make many righteous ones, as he himself carries the burden of their sins. Therefore, I'll reward him extravagantly with the best of everything, the highest honours, because he looked death in the face and didn't flinch, because he embraced the company of the lowest. He took on his own shoulders the sin of many. He took up the cause of the black sheep." My Jesus took up the cause of the black sheep. Jesus, we come before you right now and just remember you as you ask us to remember you. I just want to say thank you that you took on the cause of this black sheep to make me be able to be in relationship with you. And so let's just take the bread and let's just remember Jesus' body broken for us. And then let's drink the cup and remember his blood poured out for us so that we could be redeemed, so that we could be in relationship with him. I'm just going to close us in prayer before we move into a time of worship. Almighty, mighty God, you are unchanging. You are the God in the good times, and you are the God when we are in the bad times. You are the God when the church can fill this building, and you are the God when the building stands empty and your church is scattered around. You are the God of each person that is in their home right now. And you are unchanging, and you are undefeated. You are the God of the miraculous. You are the God of the provision. You are the God that settles fears. You are the God that and you are the God that causes people to come into life with you. And Lord, we want to worship you and we want to celebrate you because you are amazing. And we just love you so much. Amen.
Amen. We're going to go into a time of worship. we're just going to worship God because, you know, even through everything that is around us, you know, bring your praise. Praise Him and let His power and His grace and His peace rain down on the whole of creation. Let's go.
Cast my mind to Calvary, where Jesus bled and died for me. I see His wounds, His hands, His feet, my Savior on that Calvary. His body bound and drenched in tears, they laid Him down in Joseph's tomb. The entrance sealed by heavy stone, the silence still and no. Oh, praise the name before. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever. He is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side.
Praise your name. Praise your name. Praise your name. Yeah, come on, Lord. You know, we have an awesome God,
Yeah, we do.
a mighty God. You know, as we continue to worship, this first line of this song says, who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? Who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder? Who leaves us breathless in awe and wonder? The King of glory, the King above all kings. He is above all things. He is our King. He is the King of glory, and we worship Him. It says, this is amazing grace. This is unfading love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. Our God, above all things, He is in all things. He laid down His life for us. And you know, if you come to Him today, He takes away all fear. He brings peace into every situation. Let's worship Him.
Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King above all kings. confident rain. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered and reigned. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me.
Now, church, as we come to an end, just some notices for you. Prayer night, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, online. So you'll get but it's for 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. You know, you can be at home. You don't have to come here. We can all still be in God's presence. We can all still come together and pray. On Thursday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, online again. Join us for prayer. We'll send an invitation for you to come and join us. Let me just finish with a couple of things. One of the things that we've got is this form. If you want some of these, please come and let us know. If you've got a printer, we can email them to you. Or if you want, just come by the office, maybe tomorrow, pick one up, maybe give them to your neighbours. It just says hello. If you are self-isolating, I can help. My name is, you put your name. My live locally at, my phone number is, and if you are self-isolating due to COVID-19, I can help with picking up your shopping, a friendly phone call, posting urgent support. Houses around the church to do this, to be a blessing, to be a help to the people around us. That's what people need. Emma spoke on it ever so well, really well. We need to be a blessing at this time, even if it means just leaving it outside someone's door for them. They're shopping, but please do this. Come and grab some forms of us, or whatever it takes. We do our offering now. Hey! And you know, there's different ways you can give. Last night I sent an email out to those who we have your emails. If we haven't got your email, just send us your email anyway, just so that we know that we've got it. And it's an app that we've got for church. It's called Church Suite app. And all you do is go on, click it, download the app, log into it, all your information is there. Just check it, make sure we've got the right information. You put your email in there. Now on that is a link to our live feed on YouTube, to our YouTube website, so that you can watch it on there or watch other teaching that's on there. And also you can give. Hey, that's always a good thing. There's rotas for when we are meeting together, so that you know what you're doing. There's all sorts of rotas that will be on there. Giving wise, you can drop it in the church, drop it through the letterbox. Knock on the door and let us know you're outside if you really don't want to come in. Put it in an envelope and put it through church. You can go on the Church Suite app and give. You can either set up a direct debit on there, which goes straight into our bank account, or you can do one-offs with your card. I've done it. I did it yesterday. It's very safe. It goes straight to the account. You won't get scammed or anything else. It's a very safe way of doing it. Or you can give straight into the bank account. And the bank account details. The sort code is 201113. And the account number is 1005744.
I won.
You won. Barclays Bank. But you can give that way. Maybe even set up a direct debit. But you know what? Let me encourage you to give. You know, this time we're still doing stuff in the community. This church still is doing stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
And so give. Let me encourage you. Don't take this as a giving holiday. God still requires you to give.
Yeah.
So let's give, and give big and give bold into the work of God. We're going to remind you that we love you. If any of you are so isolating, please let us know, because we want to be there for you. In the office, we'll try and either send out emails or messages or give you a call, whichever way, to keep in contact. You know, this is a physical separation, not social, not a spirit on the front. And we are here every day for you guys. Let's just finish by worshipping one more.
Praise the invisible, praise the immortal one. Praise God incarnate, praise Father, Spirit, Son. For He is God. For He is holy. For He holds the keys to the grave, and forever He will reign. Invisible, praise the immortal one. Praise God, praise Father, Spirit, Son. For He is God. For He is holy. For He holds the keys to the grave, and forever He will reign. We raise our voices loud to the only one, eternally. We lift our hands up high. We raise our voices loud. The honor and glory are ending. Our hands up high. We raise our voices loud to the only one,
you that we can come together by whatever means, whether it's the group that are here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, by whatever means, and even later in the week on the website, that we can come together and worship you. Lord, that we can bring our thanks, we can bring our praise, we can bring whatever it is that we need to bring to you, our fear, whatever that is. And Lord, we can praise you, we can glorify you, we can hear your word together. But Lord, we just want to say that we love you. We trust you. Lord, help us be the church that you designed and destined to love, to bring peace into this world. Lord Jesus. Amen. So guys, as we finish our service, we just want to say bless you. If you don't know Jesus this morning and you've been listening and you're watching now, let me just encourage you. You know, maybe you've got fear about what's going on in the world right now. You know, let me just encourage you to, as Emma said, maybe message one of us. Maybe private message us. Maybe just drop something on that you need someone to give you a call. And you know, we'd love to just speak with you, help bring peace into your situation right now. But you know, there's no bigger way than to actually just respond to Jesus. Have Jesus in your heart, and you know, and just see that peace just come flooding over everything. Church, let's not fall out of contact with each other. Let's keep speaking. Send letters, phone calls, emails, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you use to communicate. You'd never have to be alone. Bless you. Have a great week. Let's speak to each other in the week. Amen.